Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining today's session. And today's session is a topic really close to my heart because I was just talking to someone else about this, actually a group discussion. So before we dive in, just a quick introduction of for who I am. My name is Umair Khan. I have been working with teams, individuals, programs, organizations for over the course of the last 13 years, mostly a telecom grand slam that I've worked with AT&T, Sprint, T-Mobile, Verizon, and then last couple of years I've been associated with financial sector with working with Charles Schwab. So just a quick overview for that in terms of waterfall environment, scaled Agile, different flavors of Agile, different flavors of project management, a lot of customer experience background I bring also before these 13, 14 years. So a lot of sales and marketing from an end user perspective. So just to giving you that context, SPC 6 and working towards my Scrum trainer certification also, as I'm a certified Scrum professional right now. In terms of today's menu, what do we have? Our topic is dependency management and how it impacts organizational culture. Before we go there, some rules of engagement. We're going to take care of questions towards the very end. So if you do have questions, please do put those on in the chat. That way we can take care of those towards the end. And with that, let's get started. Our night out, as I'm going to call it while I was practicing yesterday, dependency management and how it impacts organizational culture, because of the ups and downs that I have observed in my career over the course of last 13, 14 years. Now, how are night outs going to look like? We're going to start with just some soft drinks. I don't drink, so soft drinks in terms of dependencies, just a high-level overview. And then we're going to move over to our appetizer, which is the critical nature of dependencies. Why? Based on my experience and my learnings and everything I've learned from people that I've worked with, had the honor of shadowing and learning from, what have I gathered in terms of critical nature of dependencies and why they're so important. Then we move on to our main course, our entree, which is dependency management framework. Nothing fancy there. So please don't be scared by the word framework. It's just my way of putting it a more official spin, so to speak. So dependency management framework, I was very much inclined to use the word cycle, or was it wheel, in line with the scaled Agile sticks. But I don't know why I didn't choose that. So dependency management framework will be our entree, in which I will dive into some details in terms of why and the what's and the whens and the hows, and most importantly, the who's of dependency management framework. And then we get out of there with our dessert, which is impact on organizational culture. How doing all that based on what I have seen over the course of years, working with different clients, different organizations, mostly telecom grand slam and then the financial sector. What have I seen as impact when we talk about dependency management, and whether we are taking care of dependencies the right way or we drop the ball somewhere? So how can that one small action have that butterfly effect in terms of an organizational culture? Whether or not it changes, that is a completely different conversation, but trying to do what is in our control, how potentially that can benefit organizations. And then, of course, we come to the favorite part everyone has, is Q&As, so questions and answers. I'm going to try to mention probably time box by virtue of habit, so please excuse if I say time box to this, time box to that. So with that, let's dive in, shall we? We're at 37 minutes past the hour. Dependencies, really, I assume everyone here has a very basic understanding of a dependency. If I want to bake a cake, I need eggs. And if I'm out of eggs in my fridge, then I am dependent on either my neighbor or myself to go get eggs from Kroger or any other setup. So if my team really needs to build an API and we are relying on another team because we're not cross-functional, because we don't have the depth of that knowledge, we're relying on another team to provide us with some Swagger documents or any other documentation or any infrastructure details or architectural limitations, then we are dependent on that team. So in a very simple way, if I'm dependent on you for something, that is a dependency. That's it. I'm not gonna go into more detail, I believe, for that. Different kinds of dependencies. Now, this is something in my early years, I really had a tough time understanding this. And one of my coaches, the way she helped me understand upstream dependency and downstream dependency. So, hey, Umair, just stand here. And now I'm going to throw you a ball. And she had me stand a few steps higher. So she threw me a ball and I dropped the ball. So she was like, now I'm throwing this ball upstream. That is why she made me stand a couple of steps higher. I didn't understand why. So she was like, hey, Umair, this is upstream dependency. So I was not able to give this ball to you. I was not able to deliver this ball to you, because of which now you cannot do the work that your team needs to do. So this is an upstream dependency. I have to date find an easier for me to understand definition of upstream dependency. And then downstream dependency, same thing. What she did was we swapped places. And then she said, Umair, now throw this ball to me. Well, actually, we stayed the same place. Now, Umair, throw this ball to me. And I threw the ball. She asked me to throw it slightly faster. I threw the ball. She was still able to catch it. And then she was like, well, the fact that you were able to deliver this ball to me, now I can go and put this ball in the bag so we can go at the baseball field and then play. So upstream dependency, something that is coming to me, something I am dependent on you for. Talk about team, something my team is dependent on your team for. And downstream dependency, right opposite of that, something that I need to deliver to your team for your team to be able to finish the work or complete the work. So there are so many other kinds of dependencies in terms of logistical, financial, architectural, technical, but these are the two flow-wise. And you're going to hear that word a lot also, flow, not today, but overall, especially if we're talking scaled agile, that is a word that you will hear a lot. So flow-wise, these are the two major kinds of dependencies, upstream and downstream dependencies. Why dependencies are so critical? Yes, absolutely. The biggest thing, probably I should not have put this up top, but the fact is that it is the biggest impact is the planning impact. And just a conversation I'm going to go back to this morning we were having is during our quarterly planning, one of the teams I was speaking with, we had been having a triage conversation because there had been a lot of scope creep over the course of last 2 iterations. And when we did some audit, we found out that the said team over the course of last 2 sprints, which happened to be in the same PI increment, they added 16 new stories. And those 16 new stories equaled 55 story points. The team has not delivered 55 story points in 1 sprint. So they've actually created more work. Now, that's not something bad that they created more work. What is the impact of that? So the planning impact, how that happened, what happened based on the preliminary troubleshooting that we did was that the team did not account for when the epic was being written, when the epic was being refined, and when the design discussions were being conducted. We did not account for certain dependencies. There are certain environmental dependencies, and then there is a release dependency, which there should not be if we talk theoretical construct, but there were some release dependencies, and then there were some personnel dependencies that we did not account for. And because of that, coming into sprint 3 and 4, Now we're looking at 16 extra stories on top of the work that the team already committed. So a planning fiasco. That is why so important that we at least try to identify dependencies. If we identify dependencies, and if we identify the different dimensions of those dependencies, and we're going to talk about in the dependency framework that we have as entree. So we're going to go in some detail. So planning impact, which can really derail everything that we're trying to accomplish or do. Conflict management also has a very individual, team level, and organizational impact. Because if I, as a Scrum Master, because to me, Scrum Master absolutely takes the cake for being a very, very important role in an organization. So if I, as a Scrum Master, have seen that there are certain dependencies that do crop up every single sprint, every single PI planning, I want to be able to understand those dependencies. Because if those dependencies are not resolved, then they become conflicts. And those conflicts give rise to risks. And if risks are not mitigated in time, then we are looking at a bigger problem on a solution level, on a portfolio level, which may end up impacting customer experience, be it internal customer or external customer. Internal customer, in so many different respects, we can mitigate, try to control the damage. But external customer, there is no controlling damage. In this day and age that we're living in, social media, on a tip of button, what we've done is going to be in front of everyone. So conflict management, operational excellence really goes down to how we're doing everything, from planning the work, from doing the work, from getting help from different teams, from getting system teams, shared services teams engaged, production support team engaged. If you have any triage teams that will be doing any triage during production support impact, or that is the sole purpose of their existence. So a lot of operational details at stake as to who is going to raise the flag, who is going to manage the environment. If a certain team has pushed their code through and it has caused some impact, and now my team is trying to push code and apparently they broke something, since there was no troubleshooting at the first place, now we need to spend some extra time. So trying to take care of that in a very proactive manner, operational excellence, because what that does is 2 days ago, we had to spend about 3 hours on a call, which could have been avoided. And just a ballpark estimate of that 2-hour call, easily about $20,000 to $30,000 that the organization spent, which could have been avoided. So not just operational excellence, but also monetary excellence tied to that. Strategic outlook. Very important. The way 2023 has gone, so many organizations doing layoffs, downsizing, right-sizing, whatever you want to call that. Just looking at the growth outlook, looking at the shareholders index, you want to understand the impact it's going to have if we let this dependency go on for longer than we need to. Not that even we need to, if we do not resolve this dependency. So strategic outlook, and very important aspect there in terms of strategic outlook is how that becomes the organizational culture. Because if we do not fix something, if we do not try to resolve an issue, then that becomes a norm. If we have a definition of done in which dependencies are outlined, are called out in black and white with certain documented requirements, and if we're not going to follow those, and because of that, it becomes a culture where we're just going to ignore dependencies unless and until someone with an SVP title or VP title or an EVP title comes around and says, hey, Umair, I want you to do this. Well, we'd love to do this, Kevin, but we're going to have a conversation with all the stakeholders involved. And that turns into another snowball conversation. So strategic outlook, because when we're talking dependencies, when we're talking impact, it starts at a very operational level. It moves into a very tactical approach, and then it becomes a strategic problem, which is by virtue of the culture that we breed. So strategic outlook has a very significant impact. Then we're talking ongoing organic process versus event. Another one of my favorites. When we are looking at planning work, developing work, even mentoring someone, from a dependency standpoint, we want to make it an ongoing process, an organic process, instead of just doing the same thing over the course of 3 weeks, because now we are in the planning phase. So now we're going to take care of dependencies. And when the planning phase is finished, then we don't have to worry about any of those dependencies. So instead of having a periodic event, making it an ongoing organic process. And that really goes back to how we manage, how we resolve, how we identify, and even better, hallmark of a great Scrum Master, a great product owner, is how we anticipate dependencies, not just identification, but anticipation of dependencies. So planning impact, long-term, short-term conflict management, that can really throw in a lot of titles, a lot of organizational tussles. One of the things that comes to my mind is, I want to mention here, business versus IT. This is going to be something you will see when we talk dependencies, that, hey, business did not do that, or IT does not understand that you guys cannot just barge through the door and ask us to triage. We have a process that we need to follow. Well, business says we have customers that we need to take care of. We have so-and-so $1 million that are at stake because you guys did not do performance testing for this release because you guys did not have 3 weeks and no one told us. Exactly, because if someone had looked at that precedent that we need, instead of 3 weeks, we need 6 weeks of performance testing, we would not be in that situation that we landed in. And that actually happened with one of my clients, a telecom client, where we needed about 6 weeks worth of time. We managed to get about 4.5 weeks. We still ended up doing performance testing to the point where we would be able to meet the demands for September release of certain products, certain iconic products, but we still needed to do a lot more work to meet the traffic that the website would have or point of sales would have for the November and December traffic. So dependency management and how we go through that, the different kinds of impacts that our organization can have. Then this is the dependency management framework. Very simple, very subtle. This picture is one of my notebooks, and these are my handwritten notes. I'm a big fan of using my own pictures in all my content. I try to use my own pictures, even if you look at any other content that you're going to see from me, chances are that's going to be my own picture. So this was notes that I was taking. So, and why I use this picture is because of the first bullet point for dependency management framework is context being important from a documentation perspective. Now let's think about this. Why context is important for something that we do day in, day out, and we are having those conversations in terms of dependency. Hey, my team needs this environment ready for our SIT testing because our release date is August so-and-so. Well, you cannot have this environment ready because the testing does not even begin till, I don't know what's date today, June 1st. It does not begin before June 15th. Okay, who can we engage? Because this is a glaring situation, because if we do not do this, we are pushing our release impact, which also pushes the impact of end-to-end testing that needs to be done. So documentation, context. And when we talk documentation is, one of my coaches, Nate Jeffrey, if it's not documented, it didn't happen. And I'm sure so many of you have heard this. I keep telling my kids this thing. If you have a promise you made to someone that you owe someone something, write it down. It's not just in our work life, in our personal life too. If I need to make some notes, I'm going to scroll through my phone notes app. You're going to see so many notes because I want to document. what I promise someone, what I owe someone, what I need to do to help someone achieve something, deliver something, execute something. So documentation is at the heart of this. And what's important and what's funny is this is the part that to date I see teams miss. We do not want to document. It might be a personal thing. It might be so many different reasons that could be there. It could be a human psychology thing that I know this. Why do I need to document? Well, you know this, but I, your Scrum Master, your RTE, who's looking at the 10 Scrum Masters epics across the program increment or features or stories for any risk stories, I don't know the situation, what's happening for your story number 007. So for me to be able to have that visibility, I would appreciate if you would start documenting this. And then it also establishes a timeline, a story for a user story. So very important. If it did not happen, if it did not get documented, certainly I'm not going to think that it happened. We can assume, but let's not go through that. Execution. We've documented. Now we want to execute the work. So, and this is really where leadership comes into play. A very important facet of organizational success and a bigger facet of organizational failures is leadership's ability to not just plan or not just promise, but this is the kicker, when it's time to deliver on that promise, chicken out. And I have seen that happen where leadership would be like, yes, we absolutely want to go down this road. We absolutely want to improve our behaviors. We want to make sure our refinement's done properly. We want to make sure our deliveries on spot and our dependencies are aligned. But when it comes time to make those decisions that, hey, Umair, your team is going to see a dip of productivity for next 2 sprints. So your velocity, instead of being around 55, 60 points, probably it's going to be around 42 points, 45 points. So you're going to see that dip over the course of next 2 iterations. And that is where Umair's heart stops beating and he starts getting cold sweats. Oh my God, what's going to happen? Leadership's fearlessness to be able to accept short-term losses in order to have long-term gains. That will stand between organizational culture and how it will be developed. So execution comes down to that. It's going to be executed by the teams, but more often than not, it is leadership that needs to play that quarterback function and allow those teams who are going to be your running backs, pardon if I'm getting my analogy wrong, to be able to catch that ball and then score that goal. So execution there. And then feedback. Another part of context is we planned everything, we documented everything. This is the dependency. This is how we executed it. What did we learn from this experience? One of my teachers, what was his name? Bari, B-A-R-I, total quality management teacher way back when I did my MBA. He said this one thing: if your today is not better than your yesterday in terms of the lessons you've learned, then you have no right to see your tomorrow. And we had no idea what he meant. We just shrugged it off and just walked out of his class at the end of the class. And now looking back, especially over the course of last 12, 13 years that I've been involved with these teams, being able to know what we know based on what we did yesterday will help us get ready for our tomorrow. So feedback, initiating that feedback loop, opening that feedback channel, having that discussion, and turning those symptoms into problems and root cause, and on which we'll touch base further as we move along, being able to do that, and then closing the feedback loop. So important in terms of this bigger picture context of dependency management framework. I think we're moving along nicely. So I told you it's very simple. It's so simple that so many teams don't even do it right. And this is all it is. And how I have tried to implement it when I was a Scrum Master, I did it myself, had success there. When I moved into an RT role, educated our Scrum Masters, a couple of Scrum Masters tried it. From there, it trickled over into the entire train, and the entire train started doing this. So we saw about 20, I believe that's 25%, 28% increase in terms of resolution of dependencies. So I tell everyone this, and not just in my work life, even in my personal life. If I need to drive down to Houston from Dallas, I need to know what's happening. If the weather is going to be bad, if it is Memorial weekend, if it is July 4th weekend, Thanksgiving weekend. So I'm dependent on traffic. I'm dependent on any wrecks. I'm dependent on weather. I'm also dependent on if there are going to be any cop cars around Enos, which there are normally, and you are going to get some tickets over there. So coming back here is, what is this? What is the dependency? So now we're going to talk about epic refinement. So when we are framing our epics, once we understand what is our opportunity, what is our business value that we're going to get out of this, what are the outcomes that we should see once this epic is complete. If we have any assumptions that we want to outline, we do that also. And then we should not close discussion on that epic till the time we have asked this very important question. What dependencies do we have for this epic? And another question with that we tag along is, based on what we know today, very important, because we don't have to worry about yesterday unless there is a historical precedent there. We have no idea what's going to happen tomorrow unless we are dealing with some experience that may repeat itself. So based on what we know today, what is the dependency? Well, the dependency is that the mule team needs to fix this issue because of which 3 teams on the train cannot push their code in dev environment. Okay, this is the dependency. Now, why does the dependency exist? Well, the dependency exists because when mule team was doing their periodic upgrade, they forgot or they ignored a flag, and they had to turn that flag off. Because they did not turn that flag off, the changes they pushed caused the environment to bounce in a way where now these different code changes that other 3 teams are pushing are making the environment react. So we have that dependency. We have found out why it exists. It does not exist because we did something. That is another facet of that. What is the dependency? Why does the dependency exist? 2 reasons for asking this question is it something because of something we could have done, or something we can do in the future from a skill set perspective, from a communication perspective, from anticipation perspective? Or is it something that we need to be mindful of on an organizational perspective? Once again, going back to an organizational perspective in terms of scaled agile, if we're talking arts, or even if we're talking solution, most of the times teams are not going to have cross-solution dependencies. Most of the time it's going to be art, but you still want to be mindful of the extent as to why this dependency exists. If we train our Java developer to conduct those tests, and if we have our Angular developers who are also trained on that testing, are we going to be able to move faster in terms of peer review? Well, that is a dependency that we can take care of. So that dependency exists because we have not trained our folks, or we have onboarded folks with limited skill set, or one-dimensional skill set, two-dimensional skill set. So 2 reasons for asking this question. Why does this dependency exist? And as to that dependency, deal with facts. This is why this dependency exists. No reason for emotions there, just deal with facts. Who owns the resolution? This is where most of the teams are going to spend a lot of time, because most of the times emotions become part of this, not fact. Who owns the resolution? We didn't do anything. Mule team, nope, we didn't do it. My team is perfect, and we've been doing this for the last 10 years. What do you mean? We've been with the organization for the last 10 years. The youngest person we have in terms of experience is 5 years. All right, no problem. We're not saying you did this. Let's take a look at the logs. Well, the log suggests that Umair's team member, Adam, he was the last one to push the changes in. So let's talk to Adam. Okay, let's talk to Adam's team lead. Okay, how can we take care of this going forward? So who owns the resolution? All right, Adam's changes caused this problem. So let's work with Adam. Let's work with Adam's Scrum Master, product owner. Let's get our senior engineers on the line on a triage call, and let's find out who owns the resolution. Adam is the person, Adam's team, I don't know, let's say Marvels or Avengers going around. I haven't even watched Guardians of the Galaxy, so no worries there. So who owns the resolution? You want to clearly state it without any emotions. Who's the point of contact? Adam is. Something that we want to not forget here, always identify Scrum Master and a product owner and RTE in case it is a scaled agile environment. If it's not, then the person identify 2 individuals in chain of command. Because let's say Adam has some emergency tomorrow, next 2 days, and after that we're at the weekend, and now we're just sitting twiddling our thumbs, and we have no idea who's going to take care of this. So always a good idea. What is the dependency? Why does the dependency exist? Who owns the resolution? Who is the point of contact? So if even Adam is working tomorrow, 24 hours have passed, we have not heard anything from Adam, let's ping Adam. We've already started an email chain. Let's ping Adam. Hey, Adam, by the way, I was just checking in on this work that you committed to deliver today. What's the status of this? So getting back to Adam. When will it be resolved? Whatever we know today, based on the information we have today, when will this dependency be resolved? Now, if Adam's team lead say it will be resolved by Friday, end of day Friday, fantastic. Let's document that. And then Thursday morning, let's check with Adam. Friday morning, let's check with Adam. Hey, Adam, just checking with you. What's the status of this? And Adam says, well, we're on track to take care of this. Fantastic. Thank you very much. And then what needs to be done? Now, even though Adam's going to be doing the work, you want to understand what needs to be done. Now, on surface, this might look like a lot of information, but when we're talking epic level details, those are high level details. And the only reason you want to spend some time into drafting these details in an epic is you want to hold each other accountable. If I am the epic owner, I want to understand that this epic has this dependency, so I can start reaching out to those people that, hey guys, we've identified a dependency, we need to get on a call, we need to establish a war room or triage or some kind of cadence where we want to start working on this. So that by the time we get to the PI planning, we have everything ironed out. Yes, in an ideal world, things may happen differently, very differently in the real world, where we don't even get to iron out basic details for epics by the time our DOR cutoff time runs out. But the purpose is to try to follow a process. What needs to be done? And what's at stake? Now, this is something where I've had a lot of challenges as to what is at stake. Well, I don't want to write, this is something that's not going to happen if this dependency is not resolved. Why don't you want to write that? Because when we are documenting it, we are accepting the fact that this is what's at stake. Be it on epic level, and let's say now we've broken the epic down into stories. On a story level, you want to have that documentation because of the impact it's going to have in weeks to come, sprints to come, in your planning intervals to come, and hopefully as the organization starts maturing. Let's say Adam left the organization, but the skill set, the skill he learned here in terms of dependency management, he goes somewhere else. He gets to a point where he becomes a Scrum Master, product owner, system architect, or even program manager, and he utilizes that same skill set in terms of navigating through dependencies, or even in his personal life. So coming back to the framework, which is a very simple framework, what is the dependency? Why does it exist? Who owns the resolution of the dependency? Who is the point of contact? When will it be resolved? What needs to be done? And what is at stake? Simple best practices, keep emotions out of it. Just focus on facts. And that will take care of most of the things. And every time we define or we revisit the epic or a story, let's just go through that. Okay, are these questions, are the answers to these questions the same, or do we need to update anything? If we need to update something, well, Adam has left, so who's the point of contact now? Well, now it's John. All right, does John report to the same individual? No, John's chain of command has changed also, so let's identify that. Does John have the skill set? Yes, John has the skill set, so we're good. How does that impact the timeline? Well, timeline has shrunk now. So every time we revisit that epic or a story or even feature, if your organization deals with features, document it. Documentation will help us presenting our case when we are at a point that now we have to engage leadership. So it will help us in terms of mitigation of that blame game situation. Execution, as I spoke about, timeline management. That is where, remember we mentioned what is the timeline for this resolution? So this is where we want to keep working with Adam's team that, okay, you are going to deliver this piece of work by sprint 3. All right, we are going to commit this work by sprint 5. Because of the nature of the work, we also have to run some validation tests, some other regression testing, and only then this goes to end-to-end testing team, and they're going to take 2 weeks because of the backlog that they have for requests. So this is our timeline, and you want to manage that timeline. You want to manage expectations associated with that timeline. You see, the timeline is not that critical. It's the expectation setting and the expectation management that comes with that timeline, and mostly from C-suite executives, the SVPs, the executive directors, even IT managers, or in some cases, I've also seen from production release specialists, because they really get finicky when certain timelines are not met. So you want to manage those expectations that we are dealing with when we're talking about timeline management. Engagement from all parties involved. And because we are setting those expectations, we are looking at where those milestones are. The line we've drawn, where is that line moving in the sand? Are we moving that line, or is that line staying pretty much the same? How are we keeping everyone up to date in terms of that execution as to what is happening? Because we might be doing the work. So many times you may have seen is we're doing the work, but if we're not telling people who are engaged or who are vested in the fact that we are doing the work, it is perceived that this team is not doing anything at all. So yes, you want to have that communication also, and Scrum Master can take care of that, or even a feature lead or a dev lead can take care of that, depending on the organization setup that we have. Engagement from all parties involved. And let's say during the course of execution, something changes where we need some more help. This continued engagement comes in handy. So very important. And escalation steps, very important. That is where our chain of command, when we documented point of contact, our chain of command comes in play. Every 24 hours that pass, you want to move to the next person. It's not going to be comfortable. Absolutely not. Even last week, I mentioned to one of the product owners, she was saying that the project manager was off that day. I think he was traveling. So I asked, okay, so who's the next person in charge? Well, it's his boss. So let's get his boss engaged. She's not going to like it. Why do you want to go there? Well, because we have a timeline that we're working against, and this person is out of office. So we just want to be respectful of our time. And we just want to ask them that, hey, Pauline, do you know something about this? before John went on vacation, did he mention something about this? Because we're working against a pressing timeline. So just go one step up in the chain of command. And just because we're escalating something does not mean that we're disrespecting Umair. No. All we're trying to do is we're trying to make sure that the commitments that we have set, we are adhering to those commitments, those timelines, because it becomes a domino effect. If my work gets delayed, then everything else that hinges on that work gets delayed. So we're just trying to make sure that all the I's are dotted, all the T's are crossed. There's nothing personal. In fact, I mean, I'll look up to you. I want to learn from you. And this gives me another chance to work with you since John is out. So I want to learn from you how you tackle this situation. So escalation steps, a very integral part of execution. Wow, 413, central. And feedback. So lessons learned, as I said, you want to initiate that feedback loop. You want to understand what did we learn, what went wrong, just a pure retrospective format. You want to be open-ended. Larry King, in his last show, I think it was Ryan Seacrest, he asked him, hey, Larry, what's the secret of your success? How is it that you're able to have the opportunity of doing the same thing for 50 years? And I still remember his response. He said, Ryan, I just ask the question and I just add the word why, and then I just listen. So asking those questions, open-ended questions, will always help us initiate that feedback, understand precedents that have been set towards that resolution. And then also it allows us to close that feedback loop with what lessons we have learned, which we can take forward. And very important, you want to document those lessons somewhere. You want to have a central repository, either for your team, for your program, art, solution, whatever the case be. We want to have that documented because we want, if I leave the organization, I want a new person coming in to benefit from that information. All right, so the impact. Conflict identification and resolution. If in-house troubleshooting, problem solving, and root cause analysis. Now, on an individual basis, if I'm a developer and my Scrum Master has walked me through this dependency management framework, and he has helped me or she has helped me through this, it helps me understand how I need to do this troubleshooting, how I need to find out what is beyond the symptom. The fact that we carried over 30 points worth of work is not the problem. The problem lays somewhere else. The problem is that we did not account for dependencies when we were getting ready for planning. And that is what caused this symptom of us having to carry over work. So if I am getting better in terms of understanding and learning the art of troubleshooting, learning the art of root cause analysis, the problem solving, and anticipating that problem that comes up again and again. So that is what we want to do on an individual level, because something that's going to come up in organizational level is bench strength, succession planning, just to give it away a little bit. Team impact. This is an actual picture. We were at a Verizon PI planning, so I'm just a fan of taking pictures. So just wanted to share that. Team predictability. When teams start doing this, you build reputation that, hey, so-and-so team is hardcore on dependency. They want these things, they want this information before they will commit anything. So let's do that. Once word travels, it will travel fast. That becomes your reputation. That becomes your culture of your team. So everyone walking into that team will want to be part of that culture, will want to learn the right way. And it also allows teams to self-organize. The team becomes low maintenance. If you are learning from that Scrum Master, that product owner, that project manager who is so much ingrained into dependency management that he or she wants to and is okay with teaching these things, once that teaching, once that knowledge transfer is done, you guys are self-sufficient, the teams are self-sufficient. It may not happen all the time, or all at once, but it will happen over the course of time. And going back to what I said before, planning becomes a process as opposed to and ongoing frequent event. And this is the kicker, organizational impact, because by doing this, individuals start learning. Continuous learning becomes part of what we do every day. It becomes a trickle-up effect. So development team member starts doing something, Scrum Master is doing something with one team, word travels, okay, now organization wants the Scrum Master teaching the same team to 2 other teams. Now the entire ARC is doing the same thing because of the results that they have seen. So now the Scrum Master is teaching other Scrum Masters and even the RTEs that, okay, this is something that he or she did. Now we have knowledge transfer across different train. So you want to have that trickle up effect, information flowing from knowledge workers to management. We're not going to see that happen a lot, but when that happens, certainly brings a smile to your face. Succession planning, I spoke about that. If I'm a developer and I am doing all these things, and my Scrum Master, I see my Scrum Master doing all these things, I'm learning all this. So I may be inspired by my Scrum Master to become a Scrum Master or an RT in the future. So what now is happening within the organization is, even if there's voluntary or involuntary attrition, now we have our bench strength. Now we have those T-shaped skills that I not only know coding, I know testing, I now also understand how to resolve this by virtue of asking those questions. Conflict management, conflict anticipation, not just management and resolution, anticipation of conflict is what is going to differentiate one person from another, one team from another. And then culture improvement happens when this becomes commonplace. And that is when that bottom-up effect really takes effect. And for that to happen, we need strong leadership. Leadership which is okay letting the reins go so that knowledge workers, those product owners, those Scrum Masters can actually drive the impact. So creativity and leadership at the very team level by virtue of autonomy. So in the very end, it all comes down to these 2 people. And I hope you can make sense of this. It's leadership, mindset, and solution-oriented approach. There's no rocket science. There's absolutely no rocket science in this. The only problem is the willingness to execute and our perseverance that we need to keep doing it day in, day out. That is what will drive this change if we need to. And it will not happen over the course of one increment, absolutely not. Culture change, organizational change, even one person's behavior change takes time, but you want to have that leadership by virtue of personality, not by title. It's never going to work, seldom works. It's leadership by virtue of personality. Whatever happened yesterday. I want to focus on the solution. This is where we want to be. How do we get there? And how to get those people engaged. So all comes to people in the mix.